Also up in Queensland, Rob, it's a big year, obviously, with the election, but a big legislative program. And Yvette Darth has actually announced her resignation from the Parliament. She's not contesting the next election, but she's also got another piece of legislation that she's planning. This sounds quite terrible. She's announced proposed changes to Queensland's Anti-Discrimination Act. She says in a statement this week, and I quote, "The anti-discrimination bill we have drafted in response to the Human Rights Commission's recommendations better reflects a contemporary understanding of equality." Now, I'm always concerned, Rob, when I see Human Rights Commission, contemporary and equality all in the same sentence.
Yeah, you should be.
What's all this about? This is not going to make us more free, is it?
No, it isn't, Lyle. Look, this draft bill is a minefield of disasters. It clearly takes aims at religious schools, firstly, and that's my primary concern. We believe that if this bill is tabled and passed, religious schools will be required to surrender some of their deepest held theological views, and this will affect all religious institutions. For instance, their views on sex and gender will be likely actively monitored. That's the way this thing's looking. By the Department of Justice and Attorney General. They won't be permitted to hire staff on the basis of a lived faith that aligns with the school's ethos. And this is the kind of interference that, you would really expect from an old Soviet Union or even China. And so it's a very front foot bill. It's very forward facing, and it'll be invasive in terms of these issues that we're talking about.
That's extraordinary, because the next issue I wanted to talk to you about was similar moves at a federal level, but and we'll come to that in a second. But you're saying these proposed changes to the Anti-Discrimination Act will target Christian schools' ability to essentially uphold the ethos that the parent community expects, whether it comes to the definition of marriage or what gender is. Is that what we're talking about here?
Well, that's correct. So the bill outlines a number of protected attributes, and of course, the trendy thing at this moment is that sex and gender are front and centre. So if you're not actively supporting that part of the bill, then you come under the spotlight. Well, this is madness, and it's basically going to affect every area of employment. In fact, our employers will become a postcard for gender confusion. But I'm particularly concerned about, obviously, the Christian schools, but it goes right across the board when you look at religious education.
Unbelievable. And of course, this act contains very vague words like vilification. And I'm fully aware of this because I'm being sued currently in Queensland under this act for allegedly vilifying a couple of drag queens because I said their gender fluidity and sexualised personas were bad role models for children, and I stand by that. But to further weaponise this against Christian schools is terrible. Rob, you, and again on a similar vein, as I said, this is coming at Christian schools and religions from a federal level as well. You had a meeting this week with the federal opposition leader, Peter Dutton, about the Australian Law Reform Commission's report on religious educational institutions and anti-discrimination laws. So that's at the federal level. So it's a pincer movement coming from federal and state. Now, you discussed with Dutton the recommendations in the report. These are about a year or so old that would effectively limit the right of Christian schools to operate according to their ethos. And you said that Mr. Dutton heard and understood the ACL's concerns. That's encouraging. What can you tell us about his attitude towards these precious freedoms which schools need in which to operate?
Yeah, Lyle, look, I'm not going to blow the whole contents of that meeting, but Mr. Dutton was very warm towards us. He definitely heard our concerns about this ALRC report, and he was aware of it. He knew about the circumstances, etc. But yes, look, absolutely, again, this is a double-barreled approach. And so both from the Queensland Anti-Discrimination and the federal ALRC report, Christian schools are definitely under the spotlight. And so we highlighted that. I actually took a young pastor with me, and we were able to speak to Mr. Dutton quite freely about it. So I was encouraged at his receptivity in that meeting. And we can only hope and pray that Lyle, if there is a change of government, that the next Liberal government in Canberra would support a more realistic religious discrimination bill.
I really hope that's the case, Rob, because, look, last time a religious discrimination bill came before the Parliament in early 2022, when Scott Morrison was Prime Minister, several Liberals crossed the floor and voted against or helped torpedo, I should say, proposals, legislation that would have provided at least some protection to Christian schools. And so this is why we're where we are today. Do you think the politics within the Liberal Party might have changed under Mr Dutton's leadership to the point where perhaps we won't see that sort of opposition from within his own ranks to the freedom of Christian schools?
Yeah, look, Lyle, as you know, the ACL highlighted the voting records of those 5 Liberal MPs, and we know now that 4 of them lost their seats. So the only way attitudes change in politics is when an election is held and the people speak. And it doesn't matter which side of politics it is. And so, again, the ACL we're not a partisan outfit. We don't go for one side over the other. We're about issues. But Mr Dutton was warm. He heard what we said and he understood our concerns. So we can only hope that that attitude, combined with the power of the people in the end, will determine whether we see a sensible religious discrimination bill in the long term.
No, well said. And ACL did a terrific job in the 2022 election, highlighting those Liberals who did stand against freedom. Of course, the Liberals put one of them back into the Parliament in Dave Sharma, who won pre-selection for the New South Wales Senate. But also, I have to comment that, Dutton's predecessor, Scott Morrison, didn't stand up for the Brisbane-based City Point Christian College when it sought to operate according to its Christian ethos. So let's hope Mr Dutton will be a public advocate for parents' rights to educate their children in schools which uphold their values. So good on you, Rob, for seeking out Mr Dutton. That sounds encouraging. Really appreciate your time with us on the show today.
Thanks, Lyle. Great to be with you.
Well, that's it for this week. I'll be at the Church and State Conference in Brisbane this weekend. That's 8 and 9 of March. If you're there, come along and say g'day. I'd love to meet you at the Family First table. I'm told by Dave Pello, the organiser, that tickets are still available, so please get your tickets. You can also watch the conference live streamed right here on ADH TV. Don't miss it. In the meantime, keep up with what's going on by following me on X at Lyle Shelton. And remember, there's regular political commentary at the Family First Party website, familyfirstparty.org.au. Don't forget to make ADH TV your go-to for common sense news and commentary on the big issues affecting our nation. Thanks again for your company. Until next week, keep speaking up.